Hi, I'm Dr. Jan Blatcher, Director of the Search Autism Center in the School of Education at UC Riverside. For those of you that don't know, SEARCH stands for Support, Education, Advocacy, Resources, Community, and Hope. Today, we welcome you to our second event of what we call the eSearch Center, a new program funded by the California Department of Developmental Disabilities to produce a series of online presentations and social media communications to keep the community apprised of the latest autism research. eSearch activities are intended to expand the reach of search with both screening and research activities, and will continue these well past the current pandemic. We invite families and other stakeholders, including individuals with autism, to provide input or to become involved. I'd like to acknowledge others who supported us in producing this program. We're grateful to the UC Riverside Palm Desert Center and the wonderful folks there, in particular, to Associate Director Agam Patel, Events Manager Nancy Romaldo, and Executive Director Tamara Hedges. We also thank Gomez and Associates for their translation tonight. Also, the University of California at Riverside would like to respectfully acknowledge and recognize our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luceño, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, this meeting place is home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world, including UCR faculty, students, and staff, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. During the program today, we address the topic of research on school experiences for children with autism, from early school years to post-secondary education. You're going to hear a series of 6 lightning talks. These are 5-minute presentations by the search team members that each address some aspect of optimizing outcomes for children with autism and developmental disabilities. After the series of talks, we'll have a live Q&A, question and answer period with the presenters, myself, and the search senior staff. If you have questions or any comments as you listen to the talks, please just enter them into the chat in either Spanish or English. Our team will assure that your questions are addressed. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Catherine Stavropoulos, Assistant Director of Search, who will tell you briefly about the clinical activities that we offer the community.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us this evening. As Jan said, my name is Dr. Catherine Stavropoulos, and I am the Assistant Director of the UC Riverside Search Center. Before we get started, I wanted to tell you a bit more about the Search Screening Clinic, which offers assessments, diagnoses, and written reports for families in the Inland Empire who have concerns about their child's development related to autism, intellectual disability, or both. Search also serves as a training site for doctoral and medical students who want to learn more about how to administer and interpret diagnostic measures. If anyone has any questions or is interested in scheduling an appointment for their child, please feel free to contact us via email or via phone as shown on the slide here. Thank you, and we will now start our presentations.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ainsley Losh, and I'm a graduate student researcher at the Search Center. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about early student-teacher relationships and autism, and particularly looking at student perspectives on their relationships with their teachers. So to give a little bit of background about student-teacher relationships and autism, we know from a lot of research that the quality of early student-teacher relationships is really important for student success, and that's across a lot of different areas. So better quality relationships with teachers have been associated with positive outcomes across academic, behavioral, and social emotional domains for students. So we know these early student-teacher relationships are really important. And just to note too, sometimes I will refer to student-teacher relationships as STRs for short. So unfortunately, although we know that these relationships are very critical for young students, students on the autism spectrum are at risk for poor quality STRs. And that's been looked at in comparison to both kids without disabilities and kids with other disabilities. And students with autism tend to have relationships with teachers that are marked by more conflict and less closeness. However, a lot of what we know about student-teacher relationships has been studied almost exclusively from teachers' perspective. And this is problematic because, as we know, with any relationship, there are multiple perspectives. There's multiple inside key players. So what we wanted to ask with this study was, how do young autistic students rate their STRs? And we did this by creating a short survey to be completed by students. So items were read aloud to students, and they could respond by either circling their response on paper, and they could choose yes, sometimes, or no. Or they could respond verbally with one of those answers. Or we also used a visual aid, which depicted each choice, and they could point to their response on that visual. And this was just to accommodate different reading levels. We're working with students who were between 5 and 9 years of age, so a pretty young sample. And we included 136 students in this study. So I've highlighted a few results here. Most students actually responded affirmatively to items reflecting positive perceptions, which was a positive finding. So for example, I like my teacher was an item, and almost 81% of our sample responded, yes, I like my teacher. 75% of the sample responded, yes, my teacher likes me. So those are positive findings. We're seeing some feelings of closeness potentially in that relationship with their teachers. However, we did also notice that a lot of students did report some negative student-teacher relationship experiences. And I've highlighted a few here, the bottom three in the bottom row. So the first, my teacher listens to me. So we had about 14% of our sample said no to my teacher listens to me, maybe suggesting that they're not feeling heard in that relationship. In responding to the item, I get angry with my teacher, almost 15% responded, yes, I get angry with my teacher. And almost 18 responded yes to, I get in trouble with my teacher a lot. So some of those items are suggesting that a lot of our sample was experiencing feelings of conflict or hostility in that relationship with their teacher. So what does this tell us? Well, one thing is we can learn a lot by asking kids about their relationships with their teachers. Kids have their own perspectives about their relationships, and a lot of the times we don't always ask them about those. We don't ask them for their perspectives, and we wanted to just highlight that students really do have their own perspectives that can provide useful feedback. So although a lot of students reported positive relationship aspects with their teachers, some did report negative experiences that leave room for improvement. And just to give one example, about 14% of students reported that their teacher does not listen to them, although 35% indicated that they share an interest with their teacher. So with this example, we can see maybe we could encourage teachers to leverage some of those shared interests with students and also help students be heard in the classroom and in that relationship. And these are things that maybe could promote more positive STRs. And some of the other presentations tonight will talk about some ideas for moving forward in helping teachers to develop more positive relationships with their students with autism. So I hope there were some key takeaways here that were useful. Overall, the biggest finding was that students do have their own unique perspectives, and it's important to really ask them for that feedback and ask them about their opinions about relationships. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Yasmin Valarian, and for 3 years, I've been working as a postdoctoral researcher on the Smooth Sailing program. Smooth Sailing was funded by the Institute of Education Sciences to create a teacher training program that will help teachers effectively instruct and positively interact with autistic students in early elementary school classrooms. Today, I'm excited to give you a glimpse of our program's journey through the last few years of development and evaluation. I'll also share what we've learned about the benefits of engaging in teacher-researcher partnerships. From the very start, Smooth Sailing has been a program for teachers developed through collaborative partnership with teachers. As I walk us through this timeline, know that all teachers involved across project phases were those in general education classrooms teaching at least one student with autism in kindergarten through second grade. Starting on the far left with the program's development in early 2019, we first held focus group discussions with teachers to get to know their experiences with students on the autism spectrum and the successful strategies they used in the classroom with them. Teacher input from these focus groups, combined with findings from existing research, were then used as building blocks to create the content and strategies in program modules. Next, we partnered with teachers who served as consultants from the spring to fall of that year. Consultants were asked to review all of our developed program materials, including the modules, and provide written feedback on them. We also met with them in one-on-one and small group formats to understand their user experience in detail. Moving into the testing or evaluation phase, we then recruited a cohort of teachers to actually try out the program and provide data on its usability. So we asked questions like, is the length of the training appropriate? Is the technology for this online program easy to use? As well as questions like, do program strategies fit into teachers' daily routines in the classroom? And to what extent do teachers learn about autism as a result of taking the modules? We call this type of information social validity, and you'll hear more about it in the next talk. And last year, we recruited a small cohort of teachers to evaluate the program's initial promise. So we asked, does it work in helping teachers support autistic students in the classroom and improve their relationships? Now that's a general overview of our earlier phases, but let's take a deeper dive into one of our focus groups as an example of teacher-researcher partnerships. In our focus groups, we asked 18 teachers from California and Massachusetts to meet with us and answer a series of questions about their views on autism and the strategies that they used in the classroom with them. Given that one of our goals in this program is to improve student-teacher relationships, we specifically asked teachers what has worked for them in building more positive relationships with their autistic students in the classroom. Here's a photo of our teachers gathered in the room writing down their responses to this question. And here are a few of their top-ranking strategies that they gave us. First, taking an interest in student interests, having one-on-one time, giving positive feedback. Now, you might have noticed that taking an interest in student interests was a strategy that we also learned from autistic students in Ainsley's research. We then used this valuable information to create and validate the content in our program. We are now teaching educators how to identify their autistic students' interests, how they can show interest in what their students like, how to use these interests to motivate students in the classroom. How can they create or carve out time in their schedules to have one-on-one interactions with their students, and how to deliver positive feedback. Now, this is just one example of how we've co-designed with teachers to create the Smooth Sailing program. Through these teacher-researcher partnerships, we've built an engaging teacher training program with multiple components, including online learning modules, video conference meetings with a program coach, strategies to build positive relationships with students, and strategies to build collaborative relationships with their students' parents. Those who have partnered with our program or in our program have written us with positive reports and testimonials, like this first grade teacher who said, "This program has been extremely helpful in understanding how to reach students with autism, ways to communicate with them and build relationships." Starting this winter, we will be starting our next cohort of teachers in the full-scale pilot program. Enrollment is open, though space is limited. So if you are interested in participating, or if you're interested in sharing this information with your child's teacher, please hover your phone over the QR code for the program flyer. You can also email us at smoothsailingstudy@gmail.com. And more information can also be found at www.smoothsailingstudy.org. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Dr. Megan Ledoux, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the UCR Search Center. My research focuses on training for teachers who work with students on the autism spectrum. Today, I'll be presenting on findings from the Smooth Sailing program, which is a teacher training program focused on helping general education teachers build more positive relationships with their students. We have spent the last few years developing and testing the Smooth Sailing program with input from teachers, which is what you just heard from Dr. Valorian. So first, I wanted to provide some context for the importance of a program like Smooth Sailing. Unfortunately, students with autism are far more likely than their typically developing peers to have poor quality relationships with their teachers. Teachers, especially those in general education, report feeling ill-equipped to support students on the autism spectrum in the classroom. Across studies that have focused on teacher training, the vast majority have found that teachers are far more likely to adopt new methods if they are easy to use and acceptable. We refer to these programs and strategies as being more feasible. Therefore, it's important that teacher training programs are perceived as feasible and acceptable to the teachers who participate in them. As such, we have developed the Smooth Sailing program with a major focus on feasibility and acceptability among participating general education teachers. The Smooth Sailing program consists of 3 main components. The first is a set of online modules, the second, a parent-teacher conversation, and a third is a one-on-one interaction between the teacher and student. The online modules provide teachers with a solid understanding of autism, how the symptoms of autism impact students in the classroom, and strategies to address some behavior concerns in the classroom. The component we call Teacher as Interviewer is a conversation between the teacher and the parent of their student with autism. This conversation is different than a parent-teacher conference, as it is focused on non-academic topics, such as the student's likes and interests, previous school experiences, and strategies that work well for the student at home. The teacher works to develop a friendly conversation with the parent, while at the same time learning about the autistic child directly from the parent. For example, many teachers have reported learning about the child's interests, such as superheroes, Marvel movies, Minecraft, and other video games, etc. This component really helps teachers gain more information about their students to connect with them. Lastly, the component we call Time to Connect is a semi-structured interaction between the teacher and the student. Teachers learn to provide labeled praise and descriptive commenting while working with the student. An example of labeled praise might be, "I loved how you helped clean up the puzzle." An example of descriptive commenting might be, "Wow, you're putting the puzzle together by starting with the border and then working on the middle pieces." These Time to Connect sessions really need to only last about 5 minutes per day, but they allow the general education teacher to get to know the autistic child, instead of always having the child's aide or paraprofessional work directly with the student. You'll learn more about paraprofessionals in the next talk from Haley. The Time to Connect session is also intended to help the child feel more comfortable with the teacher and better engage in class activities. So far, a number of teachers have participated in the Smooth Sailing program and shared their perspectives on the acceptability and feasibility. As mentioned, the feasibility of training programs often influences whether teachers continue to use these new strategies. We started by analyzing quantitative data, which means we looked at some numbers. For example, we asked teachers to indicate how long they spent on the program by recording the time it took them to complete each of the online modules. As you can see from the slide, teachers spent approximately 6 hours on the program total. We had one teacher who spent significantly longer on the modules than other teachers. So with her data removed, we see the average time spent on the modules was closer to about 5 hours. I do want to note, however, that during the exit interview with that particular teacher, the one who spent significantly longer on the modules, she indicated that she really enjoyed those modules and she liked to review them frequently. And so the time spent was feasible despite being much longer than the other teachers. When compared to most teacher training programs, which are often in an all-day format over the course of 8 hours, the Smooth Sailing program was found to be more feasible in a time perspective. Teachers also commented that the flexibility of completing the online modules on their own time and from their own devices made the program particularly feasible when compared to other teacher trainings. So in addition to the numbers or the quantitative data, we also wanted to hear what teachers think. So we asked about their perspectives and gathered some qualitative data. So we conducted exit interviews with each of the participating teachers, where we asked them about things that made this program easier for them, or things that we call facilitators, and then other things that maybe got in the way or made the program a little more challenging. So we call those barriers. The vast majority of responses did indicate facilitators, or aspects of the program that made it more acceptable and feasible, including the flexibility of the modules, the brief amount of time required, and other sort of aspects. As you can see from the quotes on the slide, teachers found the program very manageable, and it was easy to carve out time for the online modules and for the other components in the program. While there were only a few barriers indicated, the main one really related to some of the more difficult content that was presented, such as the symptoms and causes of autism in the first module. So taken together, these findings really show that the Smooth Sailing program had very high feasibility among our participating teachers. This is really important because teachers are more likely to participate in a program that is highly acceptable and easy to use. So overall, we hope to continue sharing the Smooth Sailing program with general education teachers in an aim to help them develop better quality student-teacher relationships with their students on the autism spectrum. Thank you.
All right, hello. I'm Haley. I'm a school psychology PhD student at UC Riverside and a graduate student researcher with the Search Center. And before I started at UC Riverside, I served as a paraprofessional in an inclusive school district where I worked with autistic students. As Dr. Liddell just mentioned in her presentation, some teachers at times rely on paraprofessionals to connect with their students with autism. So today I'm going to present a brief overview on research on paraprofessionals and what we know about paraprofessionals who work with students with autism. All right, before I dive in, I wanted to clarify a little bit of the vocabulary I'll be using. So when talking about paraprofessionals, it should be noted that some school districts refer to this role differently, such as paraeducator, teaching assistant, aide, or special education assistant. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act refers to this position as paraprofessional. So that's what I'll be using throughout this presentation. And you may come across one of those other terms in context of serving a child with autism. For example, the school district that I worked in used paraeducator, but all these terms refer to the same position. And as a reminder, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is a federal law that ensures that students with disabilities have equal rights to education to those without disabilities. I'll refer to this as IDEA throughout the presentation. All right, so in IDEA, a paraprofessional is school staff that supports students with disabilities under the supervision of certified staff. Often certified staff is a special education teacher, or at times can be a general education teacher. All right, so the number of students with autism has been increasing. The percentage has nearly doubled from 2008 to 2018. As a result, there are more autistic students to serve now than ever before. Another shift that has occurred is the least restrictive environment from IDEA. This term ensures that to the maximum extent possible, students with disabilities are to be educated alongside non-disabled peers, often in general education classrooms, with appropriate aids and supports. As a result, the number of autistic students who spend the majority of their time in general education classrooms has been increasing. In fact, across the US, 40% of students with autism spend the majority of their school day in general education classrooms. And running parallel to this, there has been a major increase in the number of paraprofessionals utilized in schools. Over the same 10 years, from 2008 to 2018, the number of paraprofessionals rose 30%, from 50,000 to 65,000. In contrast, the number of special education teachers only increased by 8%, from 23,000 to 25,000. So taken all together, the increased prevalence of autism has created a need for increased aids and supports for those students who attend general education classrooms. And for the most part, this need is being met by paraprofessionals. So who are these paraprofessionals? The qualification for a paraprofessional, according to IDEA, is they have completed at least 2 years of post-secondary study, or possess an associate's degree, or are in compliance with the standard of quality demonstrated through a given state or local assessment. And this is just as vague as it sounds and can vary depending on the school district. And then once a paraprofessional is hired, Their training is pretty limited, especially in any autism-specific training. The amount of training a paraprofessional receives is dependent on the school district. And then, as I stated earlier, paraprofessionals are often school staff that are supervised by certified staff. And that certified staff often refers to special education teachers or sometimes general education teachers. And so that means it's the educator who is responsible for the ongoing training and overseeing of the paraprofessional. And according to our colleague, Dr. Mel Collier-Meek, teachers often feel unprepared to serve in this role due to limited professional training. So given all that, many paraprofessionals, perhaps unsurprisingly, report wanting more training. And the research suggests that when exposed to training, they do succeed. Studies show that paraprofessionals can implement a range of interventions. And in one particular study, 3 paraprofessionals were trained to implement a social skills intervention involving peers. They were able to do it reliably, and the students had more social interactions after the training. All right, and before I wrap up, I just wanted to hit a few major takeaways from this. 1, the research in this area is lacking, although it indicates that paraprofessionals do not receive adequate training to work with students with autism. But paraprofessionals are willing to undergo training and are able to implement interventions accurately when they are trained. And this is a really big upside. This bodes well for young autistic students who utilize paraprofessional supports in general education classrooms. And then finally, this area is in need of more study. So stay tuned for more research on this. We're pursuing this topic more with our smooth sailing study. Please feel free to reach out to me and email me if you have any more questions about this. Thanks.
Okay. Hi, my name is Chanel Nettle, and I'm currently a doctoral student at UCR. I'm a graduate researcher at the Search Center, and I'm also the administrative coordinator for Autism Goes to College, a documentary featuring 5 autistic college students who bravely share their stories about their college experiences in hopes of inspiring their peers. So in the last decade, there has been an increase in the number of autistic students who attend college. And researchers actually estimate that over 400,000 students that attend college are on the spectrum. So college is challenging for any young adult, but autistic young adults need specific support and resources tailored to their needs. This film, as well as the project overall, aim to inspire and provide support for autistic students and their families, as well as to inform and provide resources for educators, peers, and anyone working with these students. So autism at college. So autistic students want individualized supports. So time after time, autistic students have advocated that they want support specifically tailored to their needs, and the post-secondary environment is no different. The continued push for inclusive and autistic-centered supports has continued to make this need a priority, and we are seeing that change slowly across post-secondary options. One of those ways is that in a recent study published in 2020 reported that 28 out of the 50 states has at least one 4-year university with an autism-centered support program. While we would want this number to be higher, 5 years ago, this number was cut by more than half. And unfortunately, data on 2-year universities is currently limited. However, many autistic students do like this option as it does provide flexibility in terms of scheduling and things like that. And research on these autistic-centered support programs is mixed. Some show that the programs may reduce anxiety, depression, and loneliness, while others do not. These mixed results are primarily due to the fact that all of these support programs are not created equally. That just means that some are more structured with weekly content and goals, while others are merely a support group. More importantly, some included mentorship programs, while others did not. This last aspect is important because what research did agree on is that the positive development of mentor-mentee relationships was key. So similarly to what our prior presenters have noted, the importance of relationship building within education is still key in post-secondary settings. So this can be in the form of a professor to student relationship, or a graduate student to an undergraduate student, or even peer-to-peer, with the mentor being farther along in their undergraduate career. So these are all important mentor-mentee relationships that can help autistic students, through their college experience. And the last thing is the University Disability Resource Center. So all universities do have a Disability Resource Center where students can request accommodations, get help planning their schedules, or access resources. So of important note is that when students transfer from primary school to a university, their IEPs do not follow them. So this just means that if you want to receive services, you have to re-enroll yourself. So also different from IEPs is that it is up to the autistic student whether they want to enroll in the Disability Resource Center or not. So if they want to enroll, they must contact the Disability Resource Office themselves. This cannot be done by a parent or guardian. And the last thing is just that this can be done at any point in their college career. So if at first they don't want to receive services from the Disability Resource Center, that's their choice. But if later in their college career, they are finding that they are struggling and want more support, then they can reach out to the office at any time. Okay, so now I'm going to preview the trailer for you of the documentary Autism Goes to College, just to give you a little more context about, what are the topics discussed and what this project is all about.
I went to college without a real idea on what I was going to be. I just knew, go to college because that's where you can get a job. What job? Well, that's something you have to figure out, Guillermo.
I hope to eventually pass this entire college and then move onward to become an animator for an animation company.
Throughout my whole life, it's been hard figuring out how I was going to be able to succeed as much as my peers and compare to them.
I'm undeclared, but they really want me to push towards biology. And then that's when I learned something about myself. I can't stand this stuff.
My dad drove me to the dorm, helped me unpack, and once everything was done, he's like, all right, cool, see ya. And that was the start of my adult life.
There's a lot of good things about college compared to high school. Like, for one, I don't have to get up at 6 in the morning anymore, and so I'm not falling asleep the whole day.
My second year kind of was very similar to my second year in high school, which was really academically struggling point for me. So like my parents were constantly like telling me, go seek out counseling. During one of those counseling sessions, I ended up disclosing to them, yeah, I'm autistic.
Jonathan stood up and said they're doing a documentary about me on autism. And I saw some students kind of sit up a little bit and said, oh, that's what's going on. And it was almost like there was this acceptance.
I had to let him go, and he has to go and fly. He's a man, and he has to be the best he can be. I have a bunch of friends now, surprisingly, because I didn't have friends up until a year ago.
So I'm trying to not let my anxiety get the best of me. Good. Yeah.
Eventually, I worked out with the counselors to just breathe in and out, think to myself that I can do this.
My parents sat down with me and they said, you just need to go and at least try it.
I'm just so worked up about what's happening now, but then everyone told me that I have to look for the future. And the future is looming over my shoulder. I don't know what to do.
Okay. Yeah, so great film. Still love watching the trailer in the film. It always makes me smile hearing their stories. But yeah, so how to watch. So you can rent the film on Vimeo for 24 hours and watch it from your home. I will provide the links to all the mentioned resources at the end of my presentation as well. We also do public screenings and educational site licenses. So you can ask your school or an organization that you know to contact us and we can facilitate a screening. They can contact us via email. We are also currently planning an upcoming screening through this DDS project. The film has Spanish subtitles as well, so stay tuned for that. Another free resource that we offer and have currently been producing are free podcasts that go more in depth on these topics. So you can find the podcasts on Apple Music, Spotify, or on our website. The podcasts are only 20 to 40 minutes, so they're really quick. I personally really like to listen to them on my way to work, and they're short, they're sweet, and really informative. And very lighthearted. So I love that. It's just like a conversation. So it's very easy to listen to. We check in on the cast from time to time to learn about where they are now and their post-college life. We also interview new autistic students, such as Tony, who is a freshman at University of Oregon, as well as self-advocates such as Dr. Eric Endlich, who is a college consultant who supports autistic students navigate the college process. I really encourage you to give these podcasts a listen. Episodes are released every month. And the last thing is our upcoming online resource center. So our latest project in progress is currently our online resource center. So we're currently working on creating a website to provide more information and support to autistic students, their families, and even their professors through this free online resource. We'll be covering lots of different topics through all kinds of modalities. We have unused video clips, we're writing blogs, conducting interviews, and that'll all be available on the upcoming resource center. And it is debuting in April, so stay tuned and join our mailing list to get more information on that. And for any questions or to join our mailing list, you can email us at autismgoestocollege@gmail.com, or you can scan the QR code to join our mailing list. And thank you for listening to my presentation. All of these resources can be found on our website, www.autismgoestocollege.org. Also follow us on social media. Thank you.
All right, thank you to our panelists for presenting on these very interesting topics related to the schooling experiences of autistic students. We'd now like to open up the Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box or the Q&A. And while folks are warming up, I will go ahead and ask some of the questions that came through during our presentations. The first one is for Megan. I think this question is for you. What is unique about the Smooth Sailing program that makes it more feasible than other teacher training programs?
Thank you so much. So that's a great question. I think one thing in particular that we learned, we kind of had a blessing in disguise in terms of COVID when we first rolled out the Smooth Sailing program. And what I mean by that blessing in disguise is that we were pivoting our program to be fully remote. So teachers can participate in this program virtually. All the components are very easily adapted for remote learning. So that is one of the major pieces that came out from that study. And I think that is unique to a lot of traditional training programs, which are often a whole in-person day where a trainer will go to the school site and spend 6 to 8 hours all in one day. And as many of us who have been through trainings in that similar format, we often come out very tired and not really remembering a lot of what we learned, right? So what's nice about Smooth Sailing is that teachers are engaging in the program over the span of 4 weeks. So they have a lot more time to sort of digest that information, and they can engage in that program on their own schedule. So there's a lot of nice flexibility that way as well. So there's a couple of different factors. I think the online format, the flexibility of scheduling, and the fact that it's spread out over 4 weeks are kind of the main takeaways for that.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think if I can just chime in to say that the smooth sailing program that we are running in the winter and spring this year is kind of following the same exact format, 4 weeks. It's about 12 hours spread across those 4 weeks. And teachers receive $300 for participation. And we also have CEUs available for any teachers who are interested in getting those credits. So let's see if there are any other questions here.
Yes, I have one. I see one question from a parent who asks if it's possible, is it possible to get my child's teacher to sign up for smooth sailing?
Yes, absolutely. We have had parents kind of refer the smooth sailing program to their teachers. And what you can do is pass along that flyer. I had a QR code in my presentation. I can also upload that flyer to our chat. And you can also reach out to me directly. I will drop my email address in the chat box as well. So you can pass along information to your child's teacher. And we have plenty of literature, plenty of flyers and information for you to share with them so they can sign up. There's still space, but as I mentioned, space is limited. So please feel free to reach out if that's something that you'd like to have your teacher get involved with. We have a question from one of our attendees asking what % of autistic people graduate from a 4-year college? That's a great question. I think that is directed to Nellie.
Yeah, Jan, you might.
Yeah, you know, we don't have good data on that, but from what we glean in the literature, it's about 2%. So if you look nationally, I believe it's about, I don't know, 200,000 to 300,000 individuals a year across the whole country. But that's an estimate because many of those those autistic college students would not have really self-identified. We are seeing numbers increase in college, and we're hoping they will increase still further. In fact, Nellie, you know, one parent wrote a question that says, how early should I be thinking about college for my child? How early in high school should this process begin? What do you think about that based on your review of the literature?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that, you know, especially when a student hits middle school, and especially once they start high school, really thinking about, you know, the credits that they need and what types of A through G requirements they will be graduating with are really critical. Not every, or depending on the students, if your child has an IEP or certain accommodations, you want to make sure that your child is graduating with all of the A through G requirements they need to be able to attend a 2 to 4 year college. So that process can start as early as high school, or as early as like the beginning of high school. But you know, depending on your child and their specific needs, if they are really eager in pursuing college in another state, or you know, just a very like far away from home, you know, considering a variety of different things that they'll need, right, in terms of daily living, you know, what types of housing accommodations and things like that. There are lots of things that go into thinking about college, because it's not just, you know, you go to school and you come home, which it can be that is an option, but you know, as you get into post-secondary life, you're kind of really considering a more holistic view of, you know, you have career, you have lifestyle choices like living and things like that. So there are lots of things to consider. And I urge parents to start thinking early, but also to start having conversations with your child early. What are their desires or wants to go to college and things like that. And I think having the conversation, I personally don't think you could ever start the conversation too early. But in terms of those A to G requirements, I think that's really important that you get a jump start on that, especially as soon as they start high school, because those can impact your ability to attend a 2 or 4-year college.
I see another question in the chat. Yasmin, I'll jump in on that one. What college or career opportunities are there for students who have moderate to severe, I assume you mean disabilities or autism, and are not able to graduate with diploma credits? Are there some colleges that are willing to work with these students? I'm really glad that you asked that question, and it comes up a lot. The simple answer is yes. There are programs that work with these students, and I assume you're from California, which is fortunate because I think most of them are here in California. I'll mention 2, and you can always contact us for more information. Number 1, a lot of community colleges do have programs for students with disabilities or autistic students. Depending on whether or not there's intellectual disability, you might look at one program versus another. UCLA, for example, has something called the Pathways program, which is kind of like a college within a college. And that's for students who are not able to attend the basic UC track. Cal State Long Beach also has something like that. And that's conducted in conjunction with Regional Center. So if you're interested in that, contact us, and we'll put you also in touch with your regional center, and together be able to find some of these programs. And sometimes Regional Center also pays for it. So I don't know if we have Regional Center folks on the call. If we do, step up here and perhaps you could put something in the chat. But good question, and I'm glad you asked that.
I wanted to drop one other resource too. Our partner and colleague, Dr. Eric Enrich, he oversees a website called Top College Consultants, and he's curated a list of colleges for students with autism, students with learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities. And I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in our chat box right now. You can browse through this list of, it looks like 172 entries, 172 colleges that he's kind of put together on this website. So hopefully that might be helpful for some of you thinking about college and wanting to search for programs out there.
Yeah, and another resource that I'd like to link, and I'll attach the link as well into the chat, is our Autism Goes to College Facebook page. Also has a private group where lots of parents and advocates, and also autistic students use it as a modality to communicate, ask questions, get perspectives and feedback. People post things all the time in there, just trying to get more input and perspectives from people who have already gone through the process. So I will definitely link that in the chat right after, or very shortly, but that's a great resource as well. If you have very specific questions that you can't find resources to, it's a great resource.
At the risk of making what might look like a shameless plug, those of you that are interested in this should watch the film, and probably encourage your son or daughter's high school to show the film to teachers, because that has generated such a buzz at the high school level. And what it really does is raise the bar for these high school teachers that never thought their students with disabilities, and particularly with autism, could even attend college. And that's part of why we made the film, and that's what we would like to see happen a lot more often.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, maybe two. So this question is for Haley. I think it says, my child has a paraprofessional to support him in class, but I feel like every 6 months he has a new person supporting him. Is there any way I can help prevent this?
Hi, thank you. That's a really, really good question. And there's a few different components to that. One that should be addressed is the profession of paraprofessionals. They have a pretty high burnout rate. So a lot of times people are only in the profession for a year or two. So that kind of leads into that getting a new one every few months. And one thing that you can do to kind of take a more proactive steps is to involve the IEP team, because that support should be listed in there, and to make sure that your child is getting the support that is stated in the IEP. So whether that's contacting the case carrier or the special education teacher would be ways to be more proactive about that problem.
Great, thank you, Haley. And I believe we have one question related to student-teacher relationships here. So it says, what can I as a parent do to enhance the student-teacher relationship for my child?
Ainsley unfortunately couldn't make it to join us tonight for the Q&A, so I'll take that one. Yes. So we actually have done a few preliminary analyses on this. And one of the surprising things is that parent involvement relates to student-teacher relationships. So one thing is to be in touch with the teacher, be involved in the classroom. That's part of why our smooth sailing program for teachers encourages them to connect to parents, and likewise parents to connect more closely with them. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing is that if your child has some really challenging behaviors that might interrupt the flow of the class for the teacher, perhaps ask the teacher if they are troublesome, and maybe work together with the teacher on mitigating or lessening some of those externalizing behaviors for the child. And I think by doing that as a partnership with the teacher, the teacher might be more willing to see this as a joint effort and not see it so much as a deficit in the child, which is something we are trying very much to avoid, that kind of thinking, but rather as a goal that they can work on together with the parent. You might want to add on that as well, Yaz, since you've been working on actually coordinating the overall smooth sailing teacher training studies. So feel free.
Yeah, I think a really important component of our smooth sailing program is building on collaboration and communication between teachers and parents. And that's something that I didn't get a chance to talk about a lot in my talk, but it really is very important, not only in kind of improving the experiences for parents and for teachers too, but also again on impacting that student-teacher relationship. It makes a world of difference. So that's something that we do work on in the program and help teachers facilitate that effective communication, that line of communication.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for elaborating on that. I think that's really important. Is there a hand up here? Anna, did you want to ask a question?
I think Anna's communicating with our interpreter, Yelka. Nell, you may have mentioned this, but there is a question asking, how can I get my child's school to host a screening of the film?
Yeah, so we do offer both public screening licenses, but we also offer educational site licenses. So basically what that means is that your child's school or district can purchase the educational site license to Autism Goes to College. And essentially what happens is that the district purchases the rights to hold the documentary in like the district's library. So that means that the district or your school would always have access to the documentary and can be able to use it to show either in district or school events, or also just in individual classrooms. So that's definitely an option that a school can do, and it's a very easy process. If you know that your school is potentially interested, or you would like your school to have more information, you can always just feel free to email us at the email I provided in the chat, and I will be happy to set that up for your school, or figure out what we can do. So
I'd like to add one thing to that, particularly to our Spanish speakers. We do have the film available with all Spanish subtitles, and we will likely, as another search webinar, show that again for you. But if you would like to learn more about that, or have that film shown in your community or at your child's school, just put a note in the chat or contact us about the Spanish version.
Great, thank you, Jan. So we only have a few more minutes left, but I wanted to make sure that I mention that for anyone attending this webinar, I will be sending out a survey, a kind of post-event survey with just a few brief questions about your experience today, and kind of what you'd like to see from us moving forward. I'll also make sure to include a lot of the resources that we talked about. And then down the line, we'll also share the recording of the event. So please keep an eye out for our email. We also have some very exciting events and opportunities coming out of this DDS program from the Department of Developmental Services program. And some of those things include a chat line, additional webinars, podcasts, and more. So please keep an eye out for that as well. Jan, did you want to add anything before we log off?
Yeah, just before we log off, I wanted to mention that sometime soon after the new year, certainly, Search will have a revised and really exciting website that is being rebuilt in part with some of the help from DDS, so that all of these resources from all of our webinars will be housed there and be easily accessible for parents. It'll be very user-friendly for you to get on there and find what you'd like. And the only other message is, I know that everybody has a lot to do, particularly in the evening, so we're grateful that you showed up tonight to join us.